Greetings everybody, Forrest Nace here, Treasurer of American Steam Railroad, bringing you a little bit of an overview here of the Reading T1 2100 project and the status of where we are at today. Now when we received the locomotive here, one of the big projects we needed to do was ensure that the integrity of the pressure vessel, that being the firebox, combustion chamber, and boiler, met all of the federal regulations today. And one of the things that we did discover as we were taking the readings was that the inner side sheets here were too thin based on what we needed to have today for thickness of metal, based on the pressure of 240 psi and how far apart the stay bolts are spaced, in this case on a Reading T1, 4 inches. Now we could have derated the boiler and lowered the pressure, however based on the calculations that were done by a professional boiler engineer, the rating we would have had to have dropped to would have been too low to really have the locomotive run effectively. So the decision was made to remove these inner side sheet pieces of metal about 4 feet high and about 10 feet long and replace them with new metal that is of the thickness as originally designed, which was 7/16. Now with regard to that project, one of the things that had to be done is to cut 554 of these stay bolts out, unfortunately, that were in excellent shape. I know this one looks a little rusty. However, to remove the pieces of metal here that are secured by these stay bolts, you do have to destroy them or cut them. And how that is done is a little notch is cut either on top or beside the stay bolt, and then you stick the torch in between the piece of metal and cut it off. And that's why you can see this angle here of the cutting being done. That then allowed us to remove these inner side sheets, these two big pieces of metal, the lower halves of them, and replace them with the new metal. Now, of course, what a stay bolt does, its purpose is to keep these plates, both the outer and the inner sheet, from spreading apart under the pressure. In the case of a Reading T1, 240 pounds per square inch. Some of them are rigid. They're just basically a straight bolt through that does not move at all. Other ones are flexible stay bolts with this round head on. And how this works is this round head fits into the sleeve here, just like that, and works like your shoulder socket. So that way, as the inner and outer sheets expand and contract at different rates, because the outer sheet is cooler than the inner sheet, which is hit with 2,500 degrees of fire, they do, and I'm going to exaggerate it here, move independently. And this allows, within a few thousandths of an inch, these two plates to shift a little bit, and that's the round ball here on the end that fits into that sleeve. Now, these on the inside are either threaded, as you can see the threads in this one, or welded. The ones out of the original Reading T1 were threaded, so they were screwed in place. We're going to weld the new ones in. So that's where we are at here on the firebox portion of this project. Now there's also what's known as a thermic siphon tube. Actually there's 4 of them here on a Reading T1, and one of them did have a section that needed looked at. And after we evaluated it, we decided it best just to cut it out and completely replace it. It wasn't that big of a piece, about 8 inches high and about 4 inches wide, but we could see where it had been repaired and repaired and repaired again and again over the years. Instead of just fixing it up again with another patch weld, we decided to replace it with new metal. So that way it won't be an issue going forward with needing, hopefully, any other repairs or work. Now then, let's move to the combustion chamber and talk a little bit about that. We're standing here now by the combustion chamber on the Reading T1 2100, and that is the space between the firebox where the fire is and then where the tube and flue sheet starts, where the hot gases go down the tube. It's just an extra area for the coal to continue to burn as completely as possible. And there are some sleeves and caps on here that, while the repairs to them that were done back 20, 30 years ago were acceptable at that time, today would not meet and pass an inspection. So we are removing those sleeves and caps and replacing them properly, so that way when we have the FRA to come in and do the inspection again, everything is as of today's standards. Now everybody, you notice here we do have the side rods all off of the locomotive, and we are doing a couple things here. One of them is we're checking here for any damage or any grooving here that would be unacceptable inside these rod brasses. This is the wear point where the rod is actually mounted on the crank pin on the wheel, which we'll show you here next. So we are checking those items there with our professional contractor. Also on the rods, we're checking for straightness to see if there's any bending in them that would need to be addressed or fixed, or if we would need to send a rod out to have anything checked for cracking to ensure that the rods are structurally sound and can be mounted back on the locomotive. And everybody, the other thing we're checking for here is on the crank pins on the wheels where the rods actually are mounted, to make sure that we don't have any damage on those, and to see if any machining work or any repairs would need to be done. These have been checked. They are in excellent condition, so we have applied a light coating of grease on them and wrapped them in plastic. We also have some wood blocking here to protect them, to make sure if something fell against them that they wouldn't be damaged. But basically they are ready for the rods to be hung back on. Now everybody, we're standing here in front of one of the two steam engines that are mounted to Reading T1 number 2100. And on the steam engine here, we are on the right hand side. It comprises of one big valve and one big piston, and works similar to how an engine works in your car. The valve is different, of course, but the piston goes back and forth just like a piston in a car does. Now we have checked here for the cylinders to the linings to make sure everything looks good there. They've been cleaned, all looks excellent. We'll disassemble the valve, clean that up as well. But the engines here on the 2100 are in excellent shape, and after a cleaning and an inspection, we just expect to be able to put everything back together for use in operation. Now everybody, we're here at the front of the locomotive, and you've probably already noticed we have the pilot off. The reason for that being is when we were inspecting the front bearings, the roller bearings in the front pilot truck, 3 of the 4 looked very, very good. The 4th one, though, did show some signs of some surface rusting. So with regard to that, we have put all new fluid back in each of those bearings, so that way we can roll the locomotive back and forth. But in the future here, when we lift the locomotive up about 18 inches, we are going to have that one bearing that shows some signs of a little bit of rusting evaluated to see if anything needs to be done with it at this time. Also, when the locomotive was converted to burn oil, the Cyclone Front End, which is a series of sheet metal and screens that help circulate the draft as well as catching any of the cinders, was removed. We will need to refabricate that. It's just basically a bunch of metal that's fabricated and welded together and some screens. So not a big cost there, but we will need to create again that Cyclone Front End and put it back up in the smoke box as she's being converted back to a coal burner. And everybody, here's the tender, of course, for Reading T1 2100. The cistern, the bearings and everything are looking very good here on the tender. However, one thing we needed to do is, of course, remove the big oil bunker when she was burning oil back in her prior assignments. And we found here everything to be in excellent condition after we removed the oil bunker. What we needed to do is, of course, remove some of the bracketing that was supporting the oil bunker. And then we will need to fabricate some metal as the trough is put back in. There are some side plates that need to be added there on top, so that way there isn't a gap between the structure here of the tender and where the trough actually is for the coal to come down into. Again, easy sheet metal replacements. We'll go up and get some measurements of other Reading T1s that currently exist, or from some prints that we have or that will be available from the Reading and Technical Historical Society, who's been a great aid to us here in this project. We want to thank them very much, of course. But that is really all we need to do here with the tender, as everything else is looking in very good shape. So everybody, that is where we're at with the project with regard to Reading T1 number 2100. How can you help American Steam Railroad and the work that we're doing here on this wonderful locomotive? Well, one of the items you can do is join and become a member for just $35 a year. And that way you have the opportunity to come and work on the locomotive if you would like to do so. And of course, your funds will definitely go towards contributing the projects we have currently ongoing. We also have many fine things available in our online store, such as raffle tickets that you can purchase to either win a Reading T1 2100 HO scale custom painted or $500 in cash, your choice. We have that wonderful Doyle McCormick event coming up, and stories and a presentation you definitely don't want to miss. So please check our website out to buy tickets for that coming up in July. We also have t-shirts, polo shirts, hats, prints, model railroad videos, as well as other items for you to consider. And one of the other things you can also have is a piece of the Reading T1 2100 herself with one of the stay-bolts that we have taken out of the Firebox, that is serialized and stamped and comes with their certificate of authenticity as well, available from our online store. So everyone, we want to thank our generous donors, our volunteers that come here and work on the locomotive, our contractors, vendors, and our good friends here at the Midwest Railway Preservation Society. We hope we can count on your support, and when the open houses resume again, that you come and take a visit and see all the wonderful work that is going on here on Reading T1 2100. Thank you.